Our next guest covers the Canucks for the Province and Post Media. Missed him last week. Back from holiday, Mr. Patrick Johnston. How are you?
I am very well. Very relaxed.
How was holiday?
It was excellent. A lot of lake time. Had the Sprong news land on my lap while I was sitting in the middle of Chemong Lake. So,
did you write it?
I didn't end up writing it, but I did it one tweet, and then I left it to Mr. Steve Ewan, who's man among men to bang out the rest.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the contract? What do you think of the signing?
I mean, I sat there and I'm like, how is this guy so cheap? But then you sit and think, and there's some flags. I love it. I think it's great. I think this is a guy that Tocchet knows well. Wouldn't be coming in if they didn't believe they can say, listen, buddy, do this and this and this. We can get there. You can get a huge contract on your next deal. Because like you think about it, here's a guy that can score. He comes in, he scores, he shows he can be a complete tire fire defensively. He can be coached up to something. He'll get a nice deal next summer. He's in a certain way, he's a Dakota Joshua of a different type. Like obviously Joshua came in with tools and just needed a chance, but this is a guy that you're getting for cheap, who obviously has some flaws. You think maybe you can fix some of the flaws and you can help him push his career forward.
What are the flags that you speak of?
Well, tire fire defensively. I think maybe some sort of coachability issues, shall we say? Because he's been able to score. I mean, there are lots of stories of guys like this who come up, they have lots of talent, and they don't quite get there because they're short on hubris, if you will. And that's my impression. This is a guy that certainly can play the game, but could be a lot better if he would just sit down and listen a little bit.
Where do you put him? Because you're probably not breaking up that third line. You go top two, or do you go then that fourth line?
Yeah, I haven't really figured that one out because he is a winger, right? So I wonder if this is a one that is there more. I think there's more skill there than Höglander. You know what Höglander is. If you can get him to be where Höglander got to be as a two-way player, I think you'd rather play him over Höglander on whichever of the top two lines that he ends up on. That's your ideal scenario. Otherwise, he's sort of throw him out there on the fourth line. He can help you on your power play, maybe a bit of a second power play specialist, that kind of thing. I mean, you're seeing how things shake out. There's not a lot of risk on this deal.
For Höglander, then, what's his future here? I think it's going to be I think acquiring a guy like Sprong means that now they can kind of set up a little package if they want for a defenseman. That's kind of the way that I think it's trending. What do you think?
Yeah, you look at the way the pairings currently are set up.
Yeah.
And how you might prioritize, obviously, the right side. I think that there still was an interest to find another puck moving defenseman. That's not a guy that's a Quinn Hughes light, but a guy that can handle the puck. And you look at that third line or third pair, you think about the musing that they had about maybe Hronek can be on his own pairing away from Hughes. Is there someone we can float in there? I don't quite know how you make that work, and I don't think you're going to find a guy now that fits in that role exactly. But I do think you could maybe still find a way to add a defenseman, reset what your roster looks like and find a defenseman that can handle the puck a little bit on your third pairing and help move the puck and help your other lines. Because we saw obviously how important it was for the Miller line to play with Hughes, for instance. I mean, when they were at their best, they were able to play with Hughes. But if that means you're not playing with Pettersson, right? Like, how do you make all these things fit together? How do you maximize the grit that they do like? We know that they like that, but how do you add a little bit more of a puck moving element? And maybe that's, I totally agree with you. Or maybe that is that maybe Höglander's the way you do that.
Well, I was going to ask you, who do you think is more affected by this, Höglander or Podkolzin?
Well, I think they both are.
Yeah.
Once again, I mean, I've said it so many times here. It's very, from what I understand, the task in front of Podkolzin has been very much about just being yourself and being the guy that everyone was gushing about in 2019. They knew the reason why he fell was because he was going to go back to St. Petersburg for 2 years, and teams were anxious about that part. And I think the Canucks, this management group, now that they've been in place, once they started realizing how his post-draft sequence had gone, I think they were kind of astonished. I mean, it wasn't a secret that he was signed with St. Petersburg, but it wasn't good for him in the end. People thought it wouldn't be great, and it wasn't good. He sat at the end of the bench for 2 years, constantly playing in this style of not wanting to make mistakes. I mean, that's not good for any young player. The last time he got to be the man on his team was when he was 18 years old, and the Canucks want him to find some of that juice again. And there's been flashes of it. Certainly we saw that before he had his concussion in Abbotsford last fall. There were signs that he was starting to find, I'm going to take the puck and I'm going to go. But then he came back to the NHL and he played perfectly fine systems hockey. But there's a lot of guys that can do that. The Canucks need him to do more than that. And so, again, it is absolutely a throwdown in front of him saying, hey, can you push beyond what you've been? Because what you've been is pretty replaceable. It hasn't been terrible, but you're not killing penalties. You're not getting power play time. Once again, that great Ray line that I've used before, the moment they stop asking you to do more, they start asking you to do less, you're going to be out of here. And that is just not a good way to go.
Do you think there is any world where they would try and sneak Podkolzin through waivers into the farm, because he does require waivers now? Or do you think they are absolutely keeping him up at the break of camp, and that it would be Oman and Di Giuseppe one of?
Yeah, both, I mean,
who would be more susceptible to demotion?
Yeah, I mean, he's $1 million cap hit. I mean, there's very little reason not to take a stab at him if you're another team. There's enough talent there. He's a good kid. Like, there's good character there. Not a bad person. He's not going to come in and pout. He just needs to find more go get him. And you have to think it's there. It's certainly, I think it was once there. This kid was the captain of the Russian junior team. Like, he's someone who has a lot of character to him. And yeah, a $1 million player like this, 23-year-old forward who's got a lot of smarts, plays the game well, like for $1 million on waivers, of course someone's going to grab him.
I just don't think anyone's going to give him the opportunity here. I just don't think he's going to play in a role where you mentioned the captain of the World Junior team, and that's great, but 2 assists in 19 games.
Yeah.
Like, it's just there's no role for him to be that player. And I think when he went to Abbotsford, PJ, Matt, maybe you only even agree with me here, is he had to change his game to kind of fit who he was, and now he just hits people. Like, don't get me wrong, like, he's out there, he's 44 games last year, 15, 13, 28. So scored 15 goals, but he was a guy that was tough to play against. But then you come to the NHL, all you're going to do is run around and hit people. Like, you can make a living off of it, but I'm not entirely sure that that's the game plan for the Canucks and him.
And it's a tough one to get, I know, and I know they've talked with him about it. Like, you don't get a lot when you're playing fourth line minutes. You're not going to get a lot of chances, but you have to be ready to take those chances. And don't get anxious about it. Just go for it. We're not going to get mad at you for trying, right? Like, there is no the only thing we're ever going to get frustrated with you is if you're not doing your job away from the puck. And there's never been an issue with him doing his job away from the puck. It's when he has the puck on his stick. And there were multiple instances in that late season stint or in the playoffs where he would get the puck on the sidewall, and there was a moment to cut the net, and he wouldn't do it. He'd make the safe play, chuck it back around behind the net, which is fine. But you're there. You can create something. You have the ability to create something. And I know that those moments stick with the coaching staff and the management team, and they want to see him make it happen. And it's, again, I mean, it goes back to your Höglander point, Irf, is that here's another guy that maybe you can, maybe there is a way you're not selling very high on the player, but maybe there's another chip here that you can use to make some rearrangements on your roster and find that other defenseman that I still think they want.
Our first opportunity to talk to you since Arturs Silovs re-signed. What did you make of the fact they got him on a 2-year deal and they got him below $1 million?
I was amazed. I was impressed. It's Patrick Allvin has hit a lot of made some really good swings of the bat here. over the last couple of years. There've been obviously some missteps, but this is one of those ones where you're just impressed. Silovs didn't obviously have very much leverage. He wasn't going anywhere. I think the team is comfortable enough with him as a backup. I think they still are anxious about certain parts of his game and the sustainability of all that. We saw that the vulnerabilities against Nashville, against say like long shots. There's bits like that, and so, but for the price and for the role, and again, a good character guy, like a guy who's going to come in. He's worked hard. I've talked before about that story I wrote late in the season about how he had looked at me and said, basically, he looks around and he knows how this game works. And he said, Adin Hill, look at Adin Hill. And then he went and basically became Adin Hill. He had to step in a moment where no one was expecting him to be that guy. And Adin Hill did that for Vegas two seasons ago. And he did it for the Canucks, in the end. Silovs did his best version of that last season, and that's something. He's played well enough to show that he can, or at least he deserves a chance now to show that he can sustain some of this in the NHL. That what we saw this season is he gets a second look, he gets a third look, and at the end of the day, this is a player that Ian Clark wanted from the day he was drafted, and I think clearly this organization still believes in.
This signing to me, guys, means way more about Thatcher Demko than it does about Arturs Silovs, because now you look at it and say, okay, we have this kid, we can trust him. How much do we trust him? We're going to need to trust him because we need Thatcher Demko to be at his absolute best come March, April, and beyond. So my question to you is, Patrick, how many games is too many for Thatcher Demko this year?
Well, it is the big question. And I know, I think we all know he doesn't like talking about this part, and he's going to get questions about it, although he manages to not talk as much as he used to, which is, I guess, smart on his part if you don't want to hear the question. But it's a great one. I mean, realistically, given the workload, given the strain he's had, you shouldn't see any more than 50 starts from him at this point.
Okay, well then add in the formations, because if he's playing that well, he's going to be the guy there.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. You're right. And so this is the thing that fascinates me about all this, because we were thinking about it at the end of the season. I remember I was talking to Woodley about this, and we were trying to kind of game out what could you do. And if you believe in Silovs, and for a while we thought maybe this is what it is. He's going to be number 3, but he'll come up and play a bunch, and you'll get some other guy that can sort of bounce back and forth as well. And maybe Jiri Patera is that guy. There's nothing in his sort of career that tells me he's that, but you never know, I guess. I mean, goaltending is such voodoo now, more than ever is such voodoo. They're going to need a lot, no matter what happens. They're going to need a lot from their second goalie, and that's 30. I mean, think about it, Rick. Even if he plays 50 games and he plays a bunch, or he plays 55 games and plays a bunch at the Four Nations, I mean, that's a heavy workload, and you're not realistically in terms of workload. He's not going to make 60 starts. That's just not going to happen. So even then, you're looking at 55 starts. So 27 starts from your backup. I think Silovs should be able to handle that. It's a question for me going into that. And what happens if he gets hurt? I mean, if Demko has another injury, and listen, here's the truth: he's gotten injured every season in the last 3. What's going to happen? And how's he going to be able to, how is Silovs or whoever, Patera, whoever, going to handle that extra load? And is the team going to play well in front of it? And obviously that goes back to the discussion of the defense again, about trying to find another defenseman, because the defense core, as the season progressed, got better, and this team became a very solid defensive group, and that helped their goaltenders a lot. And it certainly mattered a lot when Demko was hurt late in the year. How well does Silovs handle that? We are going to find out.
You mentioned Four Nations. How fussy do you think NHL teams will be about Four Nations participation, especially with a player's workload like a Demko?
I mean, I don't even know how to sort of factor this, because it's in season. They already are anxious enough about the Olympics, and they have no control on the Olympics, and here's their own tournament. It's It's going to be. I don't know how fussy. I think the Canucks. I don't know how fussy they'll be, but I expect they will be fussy.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that, because talking to players that potentially might go on teams, they want to go.
Yeah,
like the best on best is tough.
Sure.
So it's like, are you really?
Well,
yeah, but you still want to represent your country.
So here's what I think. I think because this is the first best on best, quote unquote, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some time, you're going to get terrific player buy-in.
Yes.
I think once you touch Olympic ice, I'm not sure what kind of buy-in you're going to get for this going forward.
Yeah.
Once they're back in the Olympics.
Yeah, because right now this is the best
I agree.
they've got.
Yeah.
But once they're actually getting the real McCoy of being back on Olympic ice, I think this now becomes a little bit of an all-star game, and guys are looking for reasons not to play.
I mean, that's the biggest thing I think about is that time of the year and how much of a reset that all-star week has become for so many of these guys. And obviously with the all-star game, it's I don't even remember how many guys, but you know what I mean? It's not going to be as many guys as are going to be involved in the Four Nations. It's like twice as many at least. So, you know, you're taking that mid-season sunshine break in the middle of an incredibly long year. And we've talked about this before and how taxing it is physically, but how taxing it is mentally. And that break is such a big deal. So I found myself wondering about that. You're right. I think you're right, Matt. I think they will be excited this year. And Irf, as you said, you talked to some guys and they're excited to go. But once it happens, you know, what will they say afterwards? I don't think they're going to hate it as much as they hated the bubble, right? They went into the bubble. They're like, okay, we'll take this on. We'll see how it goes. And, you know, that was like, I don't want to do that again. I know that much. How are guys going to feel about giving up that mid-season kind of get yourself reset a little bit? Even those guys, I mean, they go to the All-Star game, obviously they're busy, but they do get physically there's a bit of a break for them. And this is not going to be that. So the outcome of all this is going to be very interesting to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. Because you're right. Players are far more attuned these days to their body and their workload and what they deem important and what they deem unimportant. I mean, heck, the NBA, we have guys who just say, no, regular season game there. No, not playing.
No, I don't want to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Right?
Even to those extents. Speaking of, starts Friday. We're looking forward to this. He asked me earlier in the show, flag bearer.
Oh.
Do you have a thought or two on Canadian flag bearer?
No, I've done very little Olympic research. I'm just a fan. I have no reporting. I have nothing. I have no commentary. I assume wouldn't it be one of the swimmers? I don't know.
Well, the problem with the swimmers is they compete the next day.
Oh, so I didn't realize. Okay,
no, obviously that was fine.
Okay, all right.
We were throwing around names DeGrasse or things like that.
DeGrasse is obvious. Yeah, I wonder. Well, you know, hey, what about one of the women's soccer players? What about like Tema or something like that? Right? Like, there's a team that was a great story last time round. Person that has a big, you know, obviously has a big sort of face for the Canadian team now. I wouldn't be. That would be who I would look towards. Was you pick someone that people know? I think generally. I mean, I know in the past it's been a bit of a sometimes a bit of surprise, but like, I mean, I do think it'll be. I think I would. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the women's soccer team. There you go. There's my choice.
He hasn't done his research. So you're telling me you don't know Skylar Park in the women's 57 kilogram taekwondo?
I'm afraid not.
No. Are you familiar with Sarah Douglas in the sailing?
Sure.
Catherine Beauchemin-Pinard in the 63 kilogram judo? No.
No,
will be over the next few weeks, Patrick. That is the brilliant.
I expect we're going to watch a lot of gymnastics. Molly's been studying up on this. She's now old enough to know what's going on at the Olympics. I expect we'll be watching a lot of gymnastics. She discovered what we now call artistic swimming, which actually does look pretty cool. And
Yes.
so I imagine we'll be watching stuff like that, and then I'll, whatever is available in the morning.
In fact, artistic swimming should be a medal for Canada. And of course, back
See,
in the
I did
day,
know that.
we dominated synchronized swimming
Yeah.
with Carolyn
Yeah.
Waldo and our friend
Yeah.
Karen Larson.
Yes.
Not to mention Sylvie Frechette. It's a sport we own, much like we'll own breakdancing behind Phil Wizard, aka Phil B-Boy, Philip Kim of Vancouver, who's
We have.
expected to win the
I haven't been involved. We do have stories coming on breakdancing at theprovince.com,
Yes, you
and story
absolutely
coming
should.
on surfing.
Absolutely. There is a surfing competition.
Yes.
It's in Tahiti. So
It's France, man.
not staying in the Olympic Village.
It's France, man.
It's into
Well, I look forward to Molly competing for Canada one day, a future Nadia
let's calm down.
Comaneci there.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks,
guys.
Beach.